وذكر فإن الذكرى تنفع المؤمنين.
بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. MashaAllah. That reminds me of like madrasa, when you come in and everyone gives a whole big. As you know, the talk is going to be about a nikah, or getting married, or marriage, weddings and stuff like that. And just before we begin, just so I know, how many of you are actually already married? If you can just put your hand up. 1, 2. It's a question, it's not an assumption. Are you married to each other? Okay, there was one sister, there was one brother. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. See, it's always the case. There's 1 or 2 hands because part of the custom and culture in the UK is that if you're a student, you can't get married. You don't have the ability, right? It will get in the way of your studies. It will mean that you can't complete your degree. My parents won't allow me. My parents won't accept it. I'm not old enough. I need to have a house first, a car, a job paying 30k, 35k, 40k a year, whatever your salary expectations are. What are your salary expectations after getting a degree? 30 or 0? Feta manja. What's your salary expectations? Well, you haven't thought about that. I bet the women have, and they don't even need to be earning money. They just need to be spending your money. But I bet they've thought about salary expectations. The topic of the talk is the beauty of marriage. But I don't think as Muslims, everyone sitting here, we need to, you don't understand the beauty of marriage or the benefits of marriage and why marriage is important. As you know, in Islam, it's legislated for a man and a woman to get married. There's a number of benefits of getting married. Number 1 is avoiding fornication, because the fundamental, one of the main purposes of the marriage contract between a man and a woman is to enjoy each other intimately within the boundaries of Al-Islam, as opposed to committing zina. Okay, so it's not just a piece of paper, although society will say, it's just a piece of paper. I don't need a piece of paper to prove that I love the person, that person loves me. We don't need that formality. In Islam, that formality is what makes you husband and wife. And that contract is what permits a man to have intimacy with a woman, obviously. It has to be another woman. Right? It can't be another man, obviously. It's not allowed in Islam. So in Islam, weddings are legislated. What that means is that it allows a man and a woman to lower their gaze. Right? It allows you to lower your gaze, and that means that you don't need porn. Isn't it? Right? Pornism is one of the fitnas of our time, because of we've gone to smartphones and data which is unlimited, right? In the past, in my age, my time, it was difficult to access porn. It was something, you had a brick phone, plain snake, no data. It wasn't easy. You had to go to a video shop and ask the man in the video shop. I don't know if you remember videos, VHS, Blockbuster, stuff like that. Now that's not the case. In your bedroom, in your privacy, everyone's got access to porn. I've got a situation that I want all of you to put yourself in now. What is the ruling of getting married Islamically? Is it something which is wajib? Is it something which is recommended? Is it something which is just mubah? Right? Hasn't got a hukum shari'i. Is it makruh? Or is it haram? What's the hukum of getting married? What's the ruling of getting married? Islamically. Huh? Sunnah. Good. That's it, just sunnah. Somebody else at the back. What's the ruling of getting married? Maybe wajib. Oh, okay. Maybe. Why? Depends on the condition. At the back, it applies to women. The ruling is not just for men. What's the hukum of getting married? What's the ruling Islamically? Wajib. Wajib. Completes half your deen. What if I said it doesn't complete half your deen? What if I said it doesn't complete half your deen? I might agree with you on wajib, I disagree on completes half your deen. We'll come back to it in a minute. You got more to the deen than just marriage. I.e., you've got 4 books in the books of fiqh: ibadat, mu'amalat, ankiha, and qada. So it can't be half the deen, otherwise it would be half the books of fiqh. The hadith that says that nikah or marriage is half your deen, the scholars like Shaykh bin Baz and other than them say that hadith is not authentic. Right? The hadith itself is not authentic. But yeah, it is from the shu'ab of iman. It's from the branches of iman. It's from iman that you get married, but it's not half of the deen. Okay, why is it wajib? Yes, you. You said it's wajib. There's no one behind you. Why is it wajib? Okay, so now it doesn't complete half your deen, it's not wajib. Why is it wajib? Maybe. Go on. Good. I.e., the scholars, they say that getting married is between either one of 2 things. It's either wajib or highly recommended. Wajib, based upon the hadith of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because if we say something's wajib, it has to be based upon that evidence, right? It's not because I want it to be, you want it to be. Because it has to be something in the Quran that says there's a command to do it, or the hadith of the Messenger of Allah where there's a command to do it, right? That's what makes something wajib. There's a hadith of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Ya ma'shar al-shabab, man istata'a minkum al-ba' falyatazawwaju, فإنه أغض للبصر وأحفظ للفرج, ومن لم يستطع فعليه بالصوم فإنه له وقاية." Or كما قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. He said, "O shabab," and that includes women as well. It's not just men here. "Ya ma'shar al-shabab, O young people, whoever has the the ability, the qudra, then let him get married." I.e., here, فَلْيَتَزَوَّجُوا is a command verb, which means the Messenger of Allah is speaking to young people, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and saying, whoever can do this, then do it. Literally. And then then the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentions the reasons behind getting married, because it helps you to lower your gaze and to protect your private parts, right? Whoever can't get married, he doesn't have the ability, then fast, right? Why? Because when a person is fasting, it's a protection from sinning. Ramadan is a month coming up. Everyone in Ramadan, their iman level and their ta'ah, their obedience level shoots through the roof. Literally, right? Qiyamul layl, fasting in the day, praying at night. Right, so it's through the roof. Right, so fasting does what? It stops you from committing sins, especially if you fast properly. Right, i.e., not just staying away from food, but you're staying away from everything pertaining to your permissible desires. In any case, this hadith, the scholars say, based upon this hadith, if you're shab, are you shab or you shabe? You lot? Shab, right? Same, you're young. If you're young and you have the ability, then it's an obligation for you to get married. That's one opinion. That's the opinion of Shaykh bin Baz and other scholars, based upon this hadith. The other opinion is that it's an obligation if you have the ability, and another condition they add, that you're afraid of falling into zina. I.e., I have in front of me is 2 things. Zina or marriage. Zina is not an option. It's never an option. So you're left with one thing only, which is obligation to get married to protect yourself from committing zina. Okay, we know there's a hadith that speaks about the zina of the eyes, the zina of the hands, the zina of the private, and the zina of the private parts that confirms it. Right? What's the zina of the eyes? Is the look, which is impermissible, pornography, for example. Zina of the hands is touching. Okay, that doesn't happen in pornography, but if you're watching pornography, you're usually doing it to masturbate. You're not doing it for any other reason. Okay? And then you're not committing zina in the sense that there isn't another person that you're committing zina with where the had will be established, but you're still doing something which is disobedience to Allah and has an impact on you psychologically, i.e. mentally, as well as Islamically. The guilt that's associated with it, your iman going down and all this other stuff, right? Has an impact. It's just a fact. Right? And it's widespread. It's common. So let's say that it doesn't come underneath zina, but we don't need the second view. We can still got the first view. If you have the desire, and I guess at your age you should have the desire, unless you're on a sabbatical of some sort that I don't know about, right? But at your age you'll have the desire, and you're in an environment where desires are increased as well, because it's an environment where you see the opposite gender. It's not like you come to, it's a single sex, segregated completely, you come and no, right? There's interaction and it's normal. Normal when I say normalized. Okay, so the desire is there. The second question is the ability there. Right? Is man istata'a minkum al-ba' falyatazawwaju. Okay, what does that mean now? Ability. Does it mean that I've got a house and I've got a job that pays an income of a certain amount that allows me to have nafaqah? Or does it mean that I've got the mahr? I.e., I've got the mahr, I've got that much money. And I may not have a house, but I've got the mahr. Right? This is a question that you have to kind of work around. What's ability? What's accepted? What's not accepted? The brothers that's married and the sister that's married, that student at the college, at the university, right? I'm assuming he hasn't got his own place. He's not renting. I'm assuming he's living at home with his parents. I'm assuming she's living at home with her parents. I might be wrong. It's an assumption. But it didn't stop them getting married. I.e., that's not necessarily completely ability fully. If it has a mahr, alhamdulillah, the mahr is how much? 1,000, 2,000. What's a mahr? 3,000. What is it, sisters, roughly? Someone say a figure. On his earnings. Give me an example. Because at the moment they're students, so they don't have, I guess their earnings are going to be minimal. 10% of annual, what's your annual income? Just quickly, just work it out, innit? £1,000 a month. So £12,000, 10% of that is how much? £1,200 mahr. Reasonable? Doable? Reasonable, doable. MashaAllah, go get one. £1,200, reasonable? No. Some said yes, but some said no. What's a reasonable mahr? Who's working, actually left uni, got a job, got a full-time income? What do you expect to earn when you finish uni? Generally speaking, what's your starting salary? What's your starting salary? What do you expect to earn? How much? 30k. 30,000, between 25,000 and 30,000 starting salary. Unless you did a degree that's not worthless, but doesn't have much behind it. Which is most degrees anyway, don't worry about that. You're not alone. You're not alone. 30,000, 10% of 30,000 is £3,000. Reasonable. You can do it in a summer. One summer working hard, you put down £3,000. You got mahr, you can get married in September. If it works out, you might find your wife at university, in the same university that you go to, another one. So you end up studying and finishing studies and get married straight after, or consummating the marriage when you finish your studies, or setting up house when you finish your studies. That's also a possibility. What I want to do is to highlight something, that being a student at university does not stop you getting married. Remove that from your mind, right? Yeah, it makes it difficult. It makes it challenging. It means you have to step up your game as a man. It means you have to start to reduce some of the independent thinking that you have as a woman, for example, because now you have somebody else that you're going to have to be listening to, apart from your parents. Right? But the point is, it's not impossible, and it's not so difficult that it's nearly impossible. That's the point. That has to be removed from your mind, so that as a man or as a woman, for example, your life can start earlier than it needs to, i.e., earlier than it should, earlier than people expect it to start. Marriage has many, many, many benefits. Many benefits, right? Just one of them, think about this, right? I told you about books of fiqh, divided into 4 broad categories. What are they? Who's following? What are the 4 broad categories of the books of fiqh? Ibadat, not a student at the college, someone else. Ibadat, mu'amalat. Okay, that's 2. From the back, what are the 4 books? Every book of fiqh, whatever the madhab is, all of the ahkam. We said, for example, Islam is a complete way of life that addresses every aspect of you as an individual, or you as a partner in a relationship, or you as a person that's doing business, buying and selling, working, contracts, or you as a person that's a leader, governance, right? Islam addresses all of that, isn't it? Okay, so what are the 4 ways, what are the 4 chapters then that's the scholars of fiqh put in their books? Every fiqh, madhab, Hanafi, Shafi'i, Hanbali, what did I miss? Maliki, Zahiri, every book, every fiqh, right? What are the 4? You mentioned 2, ibadat and mu'amalat. What are the other 2? What are the other 2? We're talking about marriage and nikah. Mu'amalat means buying and selling, commerce, business, and qada, issues to do with judgments and rulings. Leadership, the hakim, the one that's in charge of the people. Okay, when we speak about nikah, how many verses are there that's commanding you to do something as it pertains to marriage that you're not fulfilling? A lot, right? There's many ahkam or rulings, a command from Allah, a command from the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that you only fulfill it when you become a husband or when you become a wife. Okay, so in this regard, you're missing out on, let's say, a quarter of your life, generally speaking. Okay, why delay it? What's the benefit? What's the benefit of delaying fulfilling those commands and fulfilling those recommendations that pertain to marriage? Whether it's the rights of the husband, the rights of the spouse, whether it's the rights of the kids, whether it's the enjoyment aspect of marriage, right? Which is big. It's an important part of it, right? Why delay? So marriage has many, many benefits. From them is mutual cooperation. There's a ta'awun there between the man and the woman, that they're both going to help each other to reduce to maintain their honor as a Muslim. Pay attention to this point, because I want to highlight this, and this is really, really important for both men and both women as well, right? Which is that every sister that you may have a relationship with, if you have a relationship outside the boundaries of marriage, right, is a potential wife for you or for somebody else, or for Allah. For Allah with regards to what you say, what you ask, what you request, and how you speak to her, right? Not just that she's somebody's daughter or somebody's sister. And I'm not saying she doesn't have agency. She has agency as well, right? She chooses as well. She has agency. But as you know, if you look, for example, at the 7 people, right, that were shaded on, there's not one of them is a young person or man who a woman approached him and he said no, i.e. he refrained, right, from doing anything which was immoral with her, even though he desired her. He desired her a lot. He wanted her. He wanted to have intimacy with her, to the point that he went and he got what he needed to do that in terms of money or gold or whatever. But he said no when it came to the crunch. So this ta'awun, this working together, is to the benefit of both the man and to the benefit of the woman. Okay, we heard the command in the Sunnah. What about in the Quran? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in a verse that it is a command to get married. Allah says, وَأَنْكِحُوا الْأَيَامَ مِنْكُمْ وَالصَّالِحِينَ مِنْ عِبَادِكُمْ وَإِمَائِكُمْ إِنْ يَكُونُوا فُقَرَاءَ يُغْنِهِمُ اللَّهُ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ. Here, there's 2 parts to this, which you need to focus on as young people. Number 1, the command to get married, where Allah says, marry off, i.e. if you're a man and there's single women that are not married, Go and marry them. That's the command, basically, in simple terms. I.e., marry off the 3 singles among you. A command from Allah. If you're single, are you single? Yes. Are you single? Yes. Apart from 2. May Allah bless you. You took a good position. You're the rajul in here. Everyone else is not. Alhamdulillah. And same likewise as well for the sister. How long have you been married? 2 years. 2 years. 2 years. MashaAllah. How much was the Mahr? Do you mind us asking? Or you don't want to say? Okay. And then abaya. May Allah bless you in your marriage. And bless your wife. And your kids if you have any. Not yet. Soon. Yeah. Abu man. Yeah. Huh? Okay. Have you got a name yet? Have you thought of a name? Osama. Abu Osama. What do you pick? Okay. Here it says, if you're single, get married, basically. That's the command. If you're single, get married. That's the command there, right? Oh, don't forget, we still take it back to the conditions which I mentioned before. Ability. Don't get married and you don't have the ability to get married, because then you become a zalim, right? It's bad enough you oppress yourself, but you don't want to oppress somebody else. That's the important part here. Get married if you're single, number 1. Then it mentions, what if you're poor? Obviously, that comes up. I'm a student, I've got no money, I'm poor. Allah answers that in this ayah as well. It says, if you are poor, you lot, generally speaking, students, right? When we say poor, it's relative. This is something that we need to understand as well. Poverty is relative. In the grandest scheme of things, no one in this room is poor. Nobody in this room is poor. You're in debt, but you're not poor. If you consider debt to be poverty, yeah, you're definitely poor. But generally speaking, you've got clothes, you've got food, you've got more food than you can need to eat, you've got more clothes than you need to wear, right? Generally speaking, you can choose a hot drink or a cold drink. You can choose a fruit or a sweet or a vegetable. So you're not poor. You eat meat maybe every other day. There's no poverty here, generally speaking, relatively speaking. In any case, even if you are poor, as Allah mentions in this ayah, in yakunu fuqara'a, what's the result? Here's a conditional sentence. Understand this. It's a conditional sentence in Arabic. If you are poor, you get married and you're poor, what will happen? What will happen? Promise from Allah. Allah will give you money. If you want to put it in simple terms, yughnihim Allah. Allah will give them wealth, make them rich, enrichen them. Okay, why do you need to have that? Why does that need to be there? That needs to be there to understand 2 principles. The first one is that haja, a need, is what brings about an action. And when there's no need, there's no movement for there to be an action. But now you're married, right? You're going to do what? What's going to happen? You're going to start to seek the means for rizq properly. When you're by yourself, living at home with your parents, you don't have anyone you're responsible for apart from yourself. Mashi hal. There's no urgency. But when you get married, what will happen if you're poor? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will find that will enrich in you. Why? Because now you're going to start to take the means to get money, because you have someone that's going to be saying, I want a bag, I want shoes, I want this, I want that. Not necessarily that you're going to say it verbally like that. I'm not saying you're all going to say it like that. We're saying he's in his head thinking that. You're not going to say it, but as a man, he's going to be thinking, I need to provide for my wife. Because as a man, that's his responsibility, and he wants to do that anyway. He finds honor in going out and spending money on his wife. So he's going to be thinking that, even if she's not saying it. She might not care for any of those things at all. Right? The point is this, though. Whoever has an ability should get married. As for the nafaqah in the future, which is required from a man, then the necessity will bring about the action and the means will come. And it applies vice versa. So if a man comes to propose for marriage, and you see he has a qudra to earn money, he doesn't have it bil fi'l. He hasn't got a job at the moment because he's a student, but at the end of it, he's going to be doing what? Working, right? Don't refuse him based upon the fact that he doesn't have it right now. right? Because I'm telling you now, if you start like that, you're going to end up building something which is going to be an investment. It's going to be wealth, right? That's where wealth comes. Wealth when you build it together like that. So whoever has an ability to get married, because based upon this ayah that you heard, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will enrich him with financial means and nafaqah. If you don't have the ability, then what do? You have to be patient until you're in a position where you have the ability. As Allah says in the following ayah, وَلِيَسْتَعْفِفِ الَّذِينَ لَا يَجِدُونَ نِكَاحًا حَتَّى يُغْنِيَهُمُ اللَّهُ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ. فَلْيَسْتَعْفِفْ, i.e. seek what? Iffa. Seek chastity, i.e. stay away from zina, obviously, and stay away from anything that leads up to it as well. What leads up to zina? Leads up to zina is building up relationships and attachments, right? An attachment through a long-term relationship, months. We're going to get married a month later, 2 months later, 3 months later. Okay, we're almost like we're wives anyway. Let's just meet up. You like my wife, you like my husband. Let's just meet up anyway. So first of all, you meet up in a open place, like university. No problem, mashallah. Let's just keep going. Let the story continue. And then what happens afterwards? Okay, why don't you come out to my house? My mum's away. Or why don't you come out to my house? My parents are away. Help me with homework. Help me with this. What happens next? You're in khalwa. There's you, her, and shaitan. Right? That's just it. There isn't a situation where a man and a woman are alone together in khalwa, meaning that someone can't just walk in. Right? Khalwa means that door's locked, and for someone to come in, we have to go and open it. We have to give them permission. Right? If the door's open, someone can push it and come in, then it's not khalwa properly. Right? But now you're in a position where the door's locked, and the only way that someone's going to come in is if they have a key or you let them in. This is a situation of khalwa. This is impermissible. This is haram. Why? Because only a husband or wife should be in that situation, because what comes next should be intimacy. Right? It should be intimacy. If it doesn't happen, then it will happen eventually. So the point being is that a person who has the ability to get married, a person who doesn't have the ability, should do what? فَلْيَسْتَعْفِفْ, i.e. seek a means to be honourable. Honour yourself and honour your Muslim sister. Don't, because if you're doing something which is immoral, it's not just yourself you're disgracing your Muslim sister. And everyone's got a mother, that goes without saying, right? And some of you have sisters or nieces and the like. Okay, so just put that sister in the place of your sister. Put that sister in the place of your niece. Put that sister in. There's a hadith where someone came to the Messenger of Allah and said, allow me to commit zina. Young, desires. He doesn't want to do haram. So he's saying, permit me to commit zina. The Messenger of Allah said, would you like it for your mother? Would you like it for your sister? Would you like it for your auntie? People also don't like it for their mother, their sister, their auntie in there. So whoever doesn't have the means to get married, then they should keep themselves occupied, right, with men, if they're men, with women, for example, with work, with hobbies, with whatever else they can occupy themselves with until they get the means to get married. And when they do get the means, as it mentions here, حَتَّى يُغْنِيَهُمُ اللَّهُ. Again, there's an important point here when it comes to this ayah. In both cases, where is the wealth coming from? Ar-Razaq, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? In both cases, a person is taking the means, but their dependence is upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you get married in a situation where you don't think you have the means, your dependence is upon who? Allah. More than when you get married, when you think, I've got the means, I've got a house, I've got a job, I've got a car. You start to see yourself self-sufficient and your dependence upon Allah is less. Right? So don't be surprised if you find a student, as soon as he finishes, he gets a job which is paying 40k, puts him in a bit. Why? Because he got married and his tawakkul was upon Allah, his i'timad was upon Allah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised him, and he believed the promise, and he ended up becoming wealthy. Where the one that delayed it, he found it hard to get a job, and he got a job, it wasn't paying as good as the other person. All that happens, right? Why? Because like I said, when you have a haja, you work harder. There's a need now. Other than that, there's no need. There's another ayat that speaks about marriage. I'm not sure if we're what time are we breaking for Maghrib Salah? How long? Okay. There's another ayah which commands nikah, commands marriage as well. The last ayah, it was in Surah An-Nur, ayah number 32 and ayah number 33. Write down the references. At the least you leave with is the evidence for the obligation of getting married. And in your head you said, you're going to leave saying, okay, it's obligatory for me to get married, so let me start taking productive, constructive steps to achieve that aim. The other ayah, it says, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, ayah, and this ayah speaks about marrying 2, 3, or 4 women, if you can. Allah says, فَانْكِحُوا مَا طَابَ لَكُم مِّنَ النِّسَاءِ مَثْنَى وَثَلَاثَ وَرُبَاعَ فَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَلَّا تَعْدِلُوا فَوَاحِدَةً أَوْ مَا مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانُكُمْ. Here there's a command from Allah to get married to 2 or 3 or 4 women. But if you're afraid that you're not going to be fair, you're not going to be just, you're not going to be able to maintain 2 wives or 3 wives or 4 wives financially, and I am almost 100% certain that no one in London, not no one, that's not true, none of us in London, right, that are not from the aristocracy, right, wasn't born with a silver spoon in our mouth, inherit a load of wealth. If you did, you're an exception from this, so conceal yourself, don't reveal yourself. Are unable to marry 2, 3, or 4 women. So if when you're going to marriage meetings, the sister says, I'm going to put in the contract a condition that when you marry me, you can't marry another wife, don't get all sensitive about the topic. Don't say, no, it's my haqq, and if I can, and I'm going to do it, so I'm not going to accept that condition, and then you lose 1 good woman and don't gain, let alone gaining 2. You end up with 0. You had 1 in the bag, and you talked yourself out of it, and you end up with nothing. For what benefit? For showing that you're a man, you're going to marry 2 women or 3 women. When in the likelihood of it happening, if you're living in the UK, in London specifically, right, is unlikely unless you end up becoming fairly wealthy. Just a number out there. How much do you think you need to earn to marry 2 women or 3 women or 4 women financially? 60k. 60 per wife or for 2? 100 makes sense. 500k. He's going all 4. Is that for 2 or for 4? 2. For 2. Okay, let's not go with the 500k, let's not go with the 100, let's go in between. 1, okay, do the maths. Just do the maths. It's numbers, it's a numbers game. Everyone knows how much rent costs. Who's in student accommodation paying £1,000 for 1 room? How much are you paying? 800? 800, what do you get? Studio room. Shared toilets or your own toilets? Your own. Okay, you get 1 room, own toilet, kitchen. £800. Okay, so you get married, you're going to have a couple of kids perhaps. 2-bedroom flat in London, how much? Forget W1, W2, let's just get out of zone 1 anyway. Go to zone 2, zone 3. How much do you think it's going to cost you? 1,200, 1,300. Let's start low. Let's make it simple. 1,300 a month, that's 1 house. 2 houses, 2,600. That's after tax, obviously. So that's just the houses. Then you've got everything else connected to the house, which is all the bills. Council tax. We haven't spoken about a car yet, and we're speaking about 2 cars. She wants a car, not just you. All right? So now you've got 3 cars you have to pay for, 3 MOTs, 3 insurance, 3 tax, 3. Unless you're going to say, okay, let's go 50-50, and then you lose your rojula. I'm not saying it's not good. I'm not saying don't do it, but every decision has a consequence, right? In any case, I would be inclined to agree with him. I'm married, I've got 6 kids. I'm inclined to agree with him. I reckon 500k is a good figure to have 2 wives comfortably. Who's going to earn 500k? But we're not going to go down that road. Let's say you can do it on a budget of 150k a year net. That's a budget of 150k net. People look at me and think, no, Abdulwahid he's wrong. He's 100% wrong. I can do it on 20k a year. No, you can't. Be realistic. Not in London. Even up north, you couldn't do it for that money. I doubt it. In what? In where? In Liverpool, in the ghetto. The slums of Liverpool. Let's go to the slums of Liverpool where they'll give you a house to live there because it's so rough. They just want to move people in. In where? Bristol. Anyway, the point I want to highlight, when it comes to ta'addud, فانكحوا ما طاب لكم من النساء مثنى وثلاث ورباع فإن خفتم ألا تعدلوا فواحدة. If you fear that you're not going to be just, then take one. That one, in my opinion, applies to probably 95% of the people that I engage with. The other 5%, it doesn't apply to them because they're super wealthy, or they're wealthy, maybe not super. I don't have that many good friends. But they're wealthy and they're not in the UK, basically. Good friends meaning wealthy friends, not necessarily good. I have good friends who are poor, right? So the point is, when it comes to discussing marriage with a potential, if she does say that, and I'm not saying you should say that. If she does say that, don't make a fuss about it. Don't make out like I'm a man, I'm going to have 2, 3, 4. Allah says I can. The sunnah is... No, it is sunnah, it's true. فَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَلَّا تَعْدِلُوا. Don't forget that part of the ayah. If you fear that you can't be just, then marry one, and that's going to be all ma malakat aymanukum, or what you, and we don't have that either. Okay, good question. The first and most important benefit, I've said at the beginning, and I keep alluding to, is intimacy, right? Intimacy. That is the purpose of the marriage contract. Primarily is to permit two people, a man and a woman, to be intimate with one another. That's a benefit in and of itself. After that comes the consequences of intimacy, which are children. Children are considered wealth. When we start to measure assets, you measure assets, right? For some reason, we don't include our family. But your biggest asset, or the biggest, let's take a corporation and a company, just to give an analogy quickly. Let's say I have a company, I have a building, or let's say I run within a college. That's a college, right? We have classes, we have courses, we have students. What's the biggest asset? Is it the laptops we own, the TVs on the, is it the desks? What's the biggest asset that we have as a college? The teachers, not even the building. The building is bricks and mortar, right? I.e., if we have bricks and mortar, if I showed you a picture of a classroom, there's nothing in there, no students, no teacher, nothing. Is that going to make you think, what an amazing college, let me go? No, but the moment you see teachers, i.e., people are an asset in your life. They bring value. So when you look Islamically, what's considered wealth isn't just, for example, having a house or having a car. Kids are a form of wealth, and they're a huge form of wealth, and it's a bigger form of wealth than material things, generally speaking. So that's just 2 things or 3 things. What's the first one? Intimacy, that you can enjoy yourself, pleasure yourself, have fun, right? The second one is financial. Let's not belittle it, all right? The problem we have here, this is the second issue I'm going to address in a minute. Maybe after the slide I can come up in Q&A, because it is a very good question, and it's something which needs to be spoken about. Do not belittle the financial aspect that the man can provide in a marriage, the security and the comfort. Meaning, grafting from 9 to 9, if you work 12 hours, if you want to be successful, you should be working about 12 hours, forget the 8-hour shift. And earning money is not something which is necessarily fun, right? It's not necessarily something which you want to do. I'll give you an example. If I had the option, personally, to not work because I've inherited money and I could still do all the things I want to without having to work, I would not choose to work. I literally would not choose to work. Why? I've got money. I'm only working to get money to buy stuff for my family, right? So choosing to work for money is something that you do, not something that you want to do. So the fact that you don't have to work, generally speaking, because it's an obligation on the man to provide for you when you get married, is not a small thing, it's a huge thing. that needs to be understood in terms of the relationship, right? There's an ayat that mentions that الرجال قوامون على النساء بما فضل الله بعضهم على بعض وبما أنفقوا من أموالهم. That men are قوامون على النساء, right? That men, they're قوامون. That word has to be understood properly, right? Because it doesn't mean that they are controlling, obsessive, crazy men, right? قوامون doesn't mean that. But the ayah is clear. There's no ambiguity in it. It's not something that you can say, okay, there's ikhtilaf from the scholars. There's no ikhtilaf in this issue. The ayah says, الرجال قوامون على النساء بما فضل الله بعضهم على بعض. Allah has preferred men over women in this regard, right? By a daraja, by a level, right? Why? بما أنفقوا من أموالهم, because of what they spend from their wealth, right? So there's in the aspect of a man grafting and earning and spending, and the woman not having to do, not have to do anything. She does a lot. That's a mistake. Right? Her work is as difficult as a man's work, but just in a different area, generally speaking. Right? Her work's just as difficult, if not harder to some degree. If not harder to some degree. So those are three things, and there's more obviously that come in terms of what the woman gets. I.e., she gets paradise. Is there anything else you want? Not you specifically, individually. You as a gender, as a jinns. Is there anything better than paradise? No. There's nothing better than, nothing competes with paradise. Okay, there's a hadith of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If a woman prays her prayer, fasts and obeys her husband, she goes to paradise. She prays her prayer, fasts and obeys her husband, she goes to paradise. So it's about priorities, isn't it? What do you want? What don't you want? Basically. So there's a lot. It seems when the grass is always greener on the other side. When you're a man, you're looking at, you think, okay, it's easier. When you're a woman, you're thinking, okay, men get all the perks or the benefits. Men get 2 wives, 3 wives, 4 wives. I just say most men don't get 2, 3, or 4 wives. If they live in the UK, they get debt, right? They get debt to get married. That's what they do. They get in debt to get married. It's a fact, right? They got overheads, they got stress, they got bills. But that's what a man deals with. The woman's got her own stresses and her own problems that she has to deal with as well, which are separate to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hasn't made men and women so they can both be the same and do the same things. It doesn't exist, it doesn't work like that. Women have a fitrah, men have a fitrah, right? It's just how it is. Right? Men can't carry babies irregardless of what the media tells you. Not possible, right? They can't do it. And even if they couldn't deal with the baby in the night from a baby up until 2 or 3 or 4 years. They couldn't manage that. They need to get out of the house. They need to go and work. They need to do something, right? Women, they've got the patience for that, which is why you find in certain industries or certain fields, you find more women than you find men, and that's natural. Natural meaning is fitrah, it's their inclination. If ask me a question, I've got a question to pose to you. If you've got a child and a toddler and you're going to enroll them in a nursery, and you saw all the teachers in the nursery were men, would you be as comfortable as if they're all women? No. Men are they don't have the patience, right? Even if outside of the fact that what they could be doing, let's not go down that road. Let's just talk about just the fact of, are they gentle in their nature? Are they able to, not all women are, and some men are, but as a jinns, right? As a gender, I'd be concerned. I wouldn't put my child in that nursery. I don't care if they're all qualified. Right? I just wouldn't do it. You're talking about children, little that are young, that need a certain type of tarbiyah that men generally do not have the patience to give. Right? They just don't have it. Not all women have it either, but I'm just saying as a gender. So there are certain fields where you find it's more inclined towards what women do in certain fields, which is why you find that when it comes to studies at university, right, you find certain classes it's mostly men, and certain classes it's mostly women. Why is that? Is that patriarchy? No, it's not. It's fitrah. It's fitrah. Forget patriarchy because men are in control and that's why that happens. And if women are in control, it wouldn't be. That's not true. This is a sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah created me and He created you. You created men and He created women. He created everyone with their own role and with their own responsibilities and their own duties. And those roles and responsibilities and duties that they fulfill is what they are purposed to fulfill. And that's just how it is. Allah knows, even if you think you know, If it's contradictory to what Islam says, what you know is wrong and what Islam says is true. Inshallah, let's stop for inshallah salah, and we'll come back 1 or 2 points to continue, and then if there's Q&A, inshallah. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala nabiyyina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Inshallah, before we begin the lecture, continuing, I thought it's a good time, if you've got any questions based upon what was previously asked, then use this opportunity to ask your questions or for us to have a discussion. How I see teaching and studying is that it's a mutual benefit. I benefit from you, that's why I ask you questions, and inshallah, hopefully you benefit from me as well. But the point is that it's mutual. Okay, I'm here to learn, you're here to learn. It's not just me teaching. What's my? Okay, so the question pertains to my opinion, or what's the permissibility of women working. Then there's nothing that prohibits a wife from working, as long if her husband agrees to it. All right, and in many cases in the UK specifically, or developed countries, there's, like I mentioned before, somewhat a need in some cases for women to work so that they can have a better standard of living. Right? It makes sense at some point, but at some point it stops to make sense. I.e., for example, when commitments of children come along, working stops to make sense, and I disagree with having a baby and 4 months later going back to work and leaving the baby in a creche, right? Because of working. I think at that point, if the husband isn't earning enough, it's time to think of a different strategy and different ways of making income to make up for any lost income, right? But working in and of itself is not an issue as long as there's 2 things which are met. Number 1, it's within the boundaries of Islam, and it applies to men and to women. It's not only something for women, for example, right? And the second one is that the husband allows her to work. Another question. Yeah, the Mahr, the question was, what if the parents are adamant on setting a specific Mahr? With regards to the Mahr, this question came up as well. I don't want you to understand from the talk that the Mahr has to be 10% of his salary. It doesn't. There's no had for the least amount or for the most amount. It just has to be something of value. So I can't say, oh, let me give you a kitten for a Mahr, right? Or she can say, oh, just give me a kitten. No, it doesn't count. A kitten is not a Mahr, right? It's not something of value. Although it might be the trending, I've got a kitten for my Mahr, mashallah, right? But so it has to be of value. Okay, now with regards to the minimum amount or the maximum amount, there isn't one. If the sister says, I want £10,000, he's in his right mind to say, I can't do that, masalama, I have to find somebody else. I don't understand, I'm going to get to it. If the sister's parents are the one that's deciding in that situation, then she has a duty to go back crying to her parents, throwing a tantrum and saying, I really want to marry him because he's a good man. And the hadith of the Messenger of Allah, if a righteous person comes to marry, then don't refuse because of fasad and corruption in the earth. So she has to do her part in that case if she sees him as being suitable and compatible. But the Mahr shouldn't be an obstacle to marriage. The Messenger of Allah said the best Mahr is the easiest one. Some cultures have something called Mahr al-Muqaddam and Mahr al-Mu'akhar. Right? So they give a Mahr now, £1,000, £2,000, whatever it is, a gold ring, a diamond ring, whatever. And then in the contract it says, the Mahr is £10,000, £1,000. No, they don't say 10, they say 100 or 50. They put this big Mahr. Put this much up front and the rest is owed. When is it owed? If he divorces her. Right? It's like a prenup, but in the case of inside the contract in the Mahr agreement. If you're going to divorce her, this is what you're going to have to pay of Mahr. Right? So that happens. If he agrees to it, he's bound by it. That's it, it's done. As a man, if you say, okay, that's fine, I agree to that, that's it, you agree to it. Don't come later when you want to divorce your wife, but you make it difficult and you make her ask for khula so you can get your mahr back. So you can cancel the mahr out. That happens as well. Do you understand the mas'ala? Do you understand the issue? In any case, the best mahr is the least, i.e. the one that's manageable for the person. I got married when I was a student. Okay, at that time I was fairly new to Islam as well. I was a student at university in Roehampton doing English lit. And the mahr was a set of books, right? That's what I wanted to give, a set of books. The sheikh is there, he looked at me, he knew I was miskin anyway, because I was miskin. And he said, no. You'd think, why not? I'm giving a set of Bukhari, right? Set of Sahih Bukhari, right? That was the mahr. He looked at me and said, no, give some money as well. He knows. What's she going to do with a set of Sahih Bukhari? She's not a student of knowledge. Right? There's no benefit in it for her. Really, it might be, yes, in the library, that's hadith, sunnah, but she's not going to read it. So just give some money as well. I gave money, and the money was a small amount at that time. Alhamdulillah, I'm a revert to Islam. We don't have a culture of mahr in terms of that, this much is expected if you're from this culture, and if you're from that culture, they expect this much and that much gold and that much dresses, and that's not part. So it was an easy mahr for me, alhamdulillah. But yeah, the mahr should be easy, and if your parents make it high, then it's up to the man to work out and negotiate what. I did a nikah once for two brothers, for brother and a sister. What's that? A slip of the tongue. Listen to why it was for two brothers, because it was the dad giving his daughter away. And the conversation was with the dad, not with the girl. She's there, she's happy with the marriage, obviously, but it's the man. When you go to get married, this is another issue as well, which is important to understand. As men, you're marrying somebody's daughter who can one day be your daughter. Similar, right? You're going to have a daughter one day. You have to be honorable, right? Like you'd want your daughter to be honored, and you have to be respectful like you'd want your daughter to be respected, and you have to be a man like you'd expect the man that's going to marry your daughter to be a man. You have to go to the man. You're marrying his daughter, right? Taking his daughter away from him, right? Because the women, they obviously leave their home. They don't leave their family. You don't divorce them from their family. But the point is that I was doing this nikah for one of the students, used to be a student at the college, no longer a student. And they had the mahr in the contract, and it was mahr al-muqaddam wa mahr al-mu'akhkhar, and it was a lot. So the brother spoke to me before, and he goes, that's a lot. And I said to the man, I said, look, that's a lot. I said, it's not, he's going to agree to it, but it's not really the sunnah to have that type of mahr. You can do it, and if he agrees to it, it's bound, but it's not the sunnah. Go back to what's the sunnah, and that's always what's best. So he said, no problem. He reduced it to just the mahr, and that was it. After that, he's got no debt. Doesn't have to think, okay, he's got this debt on his head, basically, that he has to pay off, right? So that's one issue. There's no 10% of his earnings. The mahr is decided by the girl or the parents, like you mentioned, right? If he agrees to it, he's bound by it. If it's too high, he negotiates it, right? Or he agrees to it, pays it, and he works hard and pays it. That's it. That's just how it goes. I don't know. What's the mahr customary in certain cultures? Let me know. High. Like how much? What's high? Let them know now. They're here. How much? 10, 15K. Minimum. Is there anyone else who goes higher than that? 50K. 50. Your mum got 100. His mum got 100K. Alhamdulillah, brothers. 10, 15K is light work. It's easy. 10, 15K is nothing. If the dad asks for 10, 15K, don't blink. Be a man. Say, no problem. I'll give you what I have now. 500. I'll give you the rest later. Because 15K is not a lot of money in your lifetime to find. And you marry for life. Don't marry with the intention of divorce, generally speaking, all right? 15K is not much. 10K is okay. If that's the maximum, that's doable, I'm telling you. You look at it, all right? If you said on average you expect to earn 25, 30,000 as soon as you graduate, is that going to be your entire, you expect to stay on that 30,000 while you're in your 25s, 35s, 45s? No, expect it to go up, isn't it? Huh? If he doesn't have to have a good job. He doesn't have to have a good job. I can't overemphasize this, right? Men are resourceful, but they're resourceful when they need to be. Meaning that if he's by himself, he's cool. He doesn't need to eat much. He'll sleep on the floor. He's got a wife. He's not going to let her sleep on the floor. He's going to make sure she sleeps on a bed. And not just any bed. He's going to make sure she sleeps on a bed which is comfortable to her liking. That's the nature of men. So he might not have a great job now, but with your brains and his brains, inshallah, it will turn into a great job, especially if you're young. Because when you start young, it's about time. Think about it. You marry when you're 27, you've already lost how many years of working together and cooperating upon money? How many years, potentially? No, more than 7. If you got married when you're 18, the legal age to get married is 18. You've already lost 9 years. 9 years of potential strategies to earn money. Already gone. That's, let's say £20,000 a year, times that by 9, how much? Times by 10, how much? Huh? Already. Is that right? 250,000, 20 times 10. 200,000. 200, already you've potentially lost out on 200,000. It's numbers. It's maths. Do the numbers. It's age, years. Delay, but delay at your own expense. Delay at your own expense. Don't think that by getting married young, you're going to be poor forever. No, you're going to be poor at the beginning. It goes without saying. But in my opinion, you can test it if you want. Come back to me 10 years' time and have a go at me. You're going to be better off and more wealthy in 10 years' time than the person that delayed it. Any other questions or discussion points? There was another question before that we spoke about. What was it? Oh, divorce. One brother asked a question. Okay, can a woman divorce? Right? Huh? Yeah, can a woman divorce? A woman can divorce, of course. فَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَنْ لَا تَعْدُلُوا فَوَاحِدًا. Okay, if he can't be just, even with one, she can divorce. If he can't be just, even with one wife, she has a right to divorce him. There's 3 ways that a marriage ends. The man ends it, or the woman ends it, or the judge ends it. The qadi. These are 3 ways. Either he divorces her, she asks for khul from him, divorce, gives back the mahr, or the judge comes and makes fasq of their contract because of something that he's doing, for example. Right? So that's the 3 ways that marriage ends. A woman, or she can stipulate it in the contract, right, of some in the right wording, and if he agrees to it, then al-Muslimuna ala shurutihim. Muslims are according to their conditions. If you agree to something, as long as it doesn't contradict the Book of Allah, contradict the Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah, you're bound by your agreements. And the most important agreement that a man makes that he has to fulfill in terms of monetary obligation is the agreement of Mahr. It's the biggest agreement. Now, do you really want the answer to that question? The question was, a man should be prepared financially before he gets married. What should a woman do to be prepared before she gets married? There's more that a man has to do apart from that, and this applies to both men and applies to women. They should be prepared in the sense of their level of understanding of what's required of a marriage. Individually, of themselves, and also what they're entitled to from their spouse. That's one thing that has to happen, right? Women should know their huquq, their rights, right? It shouldn't be their husband telling them what their rights are. No, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you rights, and the Messenger of Allah also mentions rights that you have. You should know them, right? That's one thing. And the men likewise as well. They have to know their rights and their responsibilities. But before that, you have to be prepared in the sense that you're a person that understands your deen. You're here to worship Allah, right? He's here to worship Allah. Together, you're both doing that together. You have a vision. You have the same goals, the same objectives in life, right? Which is to, in the end, enter paradise, inshallah, right? So that being the case, once you have those, that applies to men and applies to women. Then there's an aspect which specifically applies to men. There's an aspect which specifically applies to women. And I made a mistake in the last talk I gave in terms of talking about marriage, because I had a question that says, it was all about work and men and money and stuff like that. One was like, okay, so what about the women, for example? Right, you're only speaking to men. No, it wasn't, no. The guy like him sent me a message, right? The sisters are wondering, can you talk about something else apart from work? Because that's what men do. Talk about something else, right? The reality is it's not just something that men do. Work is something that women do as well, but it's not valued like work, right? Which is housework. Housework. And I mean that with a straight face, and I don't mean it with any belittlement whatsoever. It is a job. You have to be good at managing, you have to be good at time management, you have to be good at you have to have punctuality. There's so many skills you need to manage a house, right? Because it's the same. You're managing people, you're managing chores, you're managing tasks, you're managing schedules. It's a job in and of itself, right? And I'll be honest with you, the job of a woman is harder than the job of a man from one angle and from one aspect, which is that men work 8 hours or 9 hours or 10 hours or 12 hours, depends on their ambition to earn money, all right, or their laziness or lack of ambition. And women work 24 hours when they have kids because there's no break. Once a woman has children, when I say there's no break, what I mean is that until the children literally move out of the house, it's 24 hours in terms of the care that they have to do. And then if it ends up with a child that has a disability or has needs, then it becomes like 2 kids at once. If they have twins, a bigger headache, right? Don't wish for twins. It might be cute, but believe me, it's not worth it. Do not wish for twins. It's cute. Oh, mashallah, twins. No. You're asking for more trouble, basically. If Allah gives you twins, alhamdulillah, but make sure whatever you have, you ask Allah to make it a blessing. You can manage it. So in any case, how does a woman prepare? Like a man prepares, in terms of having the strength of character and identity, first and foremost, by understanding what you're entitled to, your rights, and thirdly, by making sure you've got good baking skills, chef skills, and all the other stuff. And there's loads of videos on TikTok. I don't encourage TikTok, but if you're on TikTok, there's loads of good videos there to learn all that stuff. Yeah. That doesn't mean the man can't learn to cook either, but you want him to cook or you want him to work, it's up to you. Pick your battles. Yeah. Okay, if it's too long, I might defer it to the end, but go for it. Yeah. Yeah. I'd prefer if there was a woman asking that question. You should be asking, what should the man do? You're a man, ask on behalf of the men, let the women ask on behalf of the women. But I generally have an example of that, not of that, because there was no toxicity in the marriage at all, right? But the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was going to divorce one of his wives, right? And she said, don't divorce me, right? And she said that, she gave up she made tanazul of some of her rights in terms of the nights and stuff like that. So there's agreements that they can come to. There doesn't always have to be a sexual relationship for marriage to continue. But where there is a desire for sex and only one party's desiring it, the other party's not, that's where the problem becomes, and they should go to the Sharia Council. That's a short answer. If she thinks that it's better not to be married, or if he thinks that it's better not to be married, and they should get counselling. There's steps that they should take basically because it's not a small decision after 20 years of marriage, and there's no harm staying married even if there's no sexual intimacy, as long as they're both happy with that. There's not an issue in that whatsoever, right? Generally speaking. No. Go on. Okay, we're going to come to that now then. It's in the next part of the talk. Is there another question that's just... Okay, we'll come to that as well. Same question. What's what? What's there? Keeping the marriage lively. Keeping it lively. Are you married? Okay, inshallah, you're going to be married soon. Are you married? Alhamdulillah, good. Ni'ma barakah. Good. Inshallah, we'll speak about that as well then. Make a note of these 3 questions so we can discuss them. The first question, keep the marriage lively so that you can have a long, happy marriage, full of fun, obviously. The second question was to overcome cultural barriers, i.e. parents, for example, say that you should get married at a set time. And the third one was to do with, what was the question again? To do with how the right steps to take to find someone. Okay, the first one, the right steps. How do you approach a potential? How do you approach a potential, isn't it? Is that right? How to approach a potential for marriage? Have you got a potential to approach? Just so I'm aware that it's a beneficial. It's not hypothetical. Half. Okay. The first thing to understand in all of this is that it's important not to see marriage as a taboo topic in the sense of I can't approach someone, it's taboo. I can't bring up marriage with my parents, it's taboo. Culturally, we don't speak about it until they speak about it, and that needs to be undone. That's the first thing. The conversation has to start from a fairly early age. Let me give you an example. Say you're at university, right? First year, okay, that's fine. Okay, second year, okay, you're in your third year. Third year is when you should be thinking about marriage if you're going to finish uni first, because if you start to think about marriage when you finish your third year, you're going to wait 2 years before you potentially find someone. So if you start in your third year thinking about it, looking for someone, number one, you've already got a pool of people, generally speaking, sisters and brothers and the like, in ISOCs. That's one benefit of starting at that time. But even outside of it, your parents now know that you're planning to get married as soon as you finish, and you're not going to wait until you get a job and wait until you start earning and stuff like that. There's a intention that's already been expressed. So you've started the build up. You don't wait until you find someone and drop it on your parents and say, oh, guess what? I found someone I want to get married, right? That's problematic, right? So already the discussion, it shouldn't be a taboo subject, right? There was 3 men that came to the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and one of them spoke about he's going to be a monk, right? Not he's going to be a monk literally in terms of just, I said he's not going to get married. The other one said, I'm going to fast all day, I'm not going to break my fast. The other one said, I'm going to stay up all night in prayer, I'm not going to sleep. Right? These 3 actions in themselves, what are they? Ibadah, tahajjud, siyam, and staying away from desires. Staying away from desires in and of itself is an act of ibadah. I'm not acting upon your shahawat. We have 2 things that we have to be aware of all the time. 2 ways in which shaitan comes and messes up our iman. Number one is your shahawat, your desires. The other one is shubahat, doubts, right, about the deen, or doubts about your aqidah. These 2 things you have to always be aware of. I don't want to use the example, it's bad, but spider senses. Oh, this is a shubha, get away from it, right? You have to stay away from these 2 things all the time. So these 3 people came to the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in doing what would seemingly look like good actions. Was the Messenger of Allah happy, or was he unhappy with their actions? Did he say well done, or did he criticize them and turn them away? He said no. He said, with regards to me, I fast and I break my fast, I pray at night and I sleep, and I get married to women, right? فَمَنْ رَغِبَ عَنْ سُنَّتِي فَلَيْسَ مِنِّي. Whoever turns away from my sunnah is not from me. So the issue is our parents, or your parents, they know that at some point you're going to get married, so it's better to start the discussion while you're at university rather than when you leave. And that way you can get over some of the cultural barriers, because they now know that you're serious, and then they can start saying, no, wait until then, and then you can start the conversation. That's one thing. After that is the issue of who you choose, the steps, right? Who do you choose to marry? Do your parents choose, or do you choose? Are you the one that's going to find someone, right? Or are your parents going to find someone for you? These are all cultural things. There's nothing wrong with arranged marriages. Understand that. There's nothing wrong with arranged marriages. What there's not allowed is unhappy marriages, i.e. forced marriages, meaning that because of the guilt and the pressure from your parents and your mother specifically in this one, right, that's just take a sideline, unfortunately, on these ones. And the boys, they have the soft spot for their mums and they can't deal with it. Girls, they don't mind generally doing their thing for some reason, but boys and their mums, it's difficult. So they end up falling in line and being unhappy sometimes, right? Not taking a proposal, a potential, and they were suitable because their mum's not unhappy with it. I'll say this and I'll say this clearly, that your parents do not have a right to stop you from marrying someone who's suitable for you. Yeah, you have to consider your parents' wishes. It goes without saying, and women can't get married without a wali, without a guardian. But in terms of a man and the, let's say I won't call it a guilt trip, that's not really fair, but the parents not being accepting a suitable potential for you, and the mum specifically, then if she's the right person and everything meets, all the conditions are there that are meet, then you persuade your mum. If she doesn't agree, then there's nothing stopping you from getting married Islamically. I.e., obedience to the parents does not trump obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and protecting yourself from falling into zina and marrying someone that's going to be suitable for you. That has to be made clear, because we understand your mother, and we understand from that pleasing her, and that's all true. She has a very high status, but if there's a suitable, then she doesn't have the position of stopping you from getting married, regardless of culture. But I'll go back and repeat, there's nothing wrong with arranged marriages. There's nothing wrong, and in many cases it works out, right? As more so than marriages which are not arranged, where you've arranged them yourself. In any case, you always have to make sure that you pick someone that you're attracted to. That's key. Your mum brings someone and you're not attracted to her, but your mum's, crying, and if you don't, I'll never be happy, and you're not attracted to her. What's the benefit of the marriage? You're going to ruin two lives. Either upset your mum for a while, or ruin the girl's life that you married and you're not attracted to her. You're not going to treat her kindly. If you're not attracted to her, there's no physical attraction. How are you going to be kind to her? How are you going to compliment her? How are you going to buy her gifts? How are you going to be nice? You won't be able to, because you only married her because of your mother, right? And so there's going to be a problem with the relationship from the beginning, and that marriage won't be successful and it won't last. Right? The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam spoke about choosing a spouse, right? And he gave, in terms of a woman, he gave criteria. In terms of a man, he gave criteria, right? And the criteria that he mentions for a man is that a woman is married for four things. She's married for her wealth. She's married for her nasab, which is her lineage, she's noble, she's from a certain family. She's married for her looks, her beauty, and she's married for her deen, taqwa, right? And the Messenger of Allah said, choose the one that has deen and may you be successful. Meaning, don't marry somebody just because you're attracted to them, but they don't have the right level of deen, which is compatible for you. People are different in terms of their level of iman, right? So people have compatibility. Make sure the person you marry, she's the one how you want to marry her as she is, and he's the one you want to marry him as he is there. Not, I can work on him, I can fix him, right? I can make him. No, he has to be how you want him there, right? Yeah, you may be able to work on him, but you might make him worse by trying to work on him, right? And yeah, you might be able to work on her, and yeah, she might say, I'm going to do this when we get married, but there's an issue already, okay? So compatibility is in deen, first and foremost. But then also as well, there's a hadith that shows that a man, when he's going to get married to a woman, he should look at her to make sure he's attracted to her. Because a marriage is going to last when there's physical attraction. There's no physical attraction, completely blind marriage. You've never even seen her before you got married, right? The wedding night, right? That's when you see her. What if you're not happy? What if she's not happy with you as well? That's not right. That's not Islam. So where culture comes and it clashes and it contradicts what Islam says, then Islam is what's given priority and culture is left to the side. Where culture doesn't contradict Islam, then act upon culture all day long. There's nothing wrong with it whatsoever. Okay, so it's not a case where every culture that your parents have is un-Islamic. No, you may be ignorant of Islam in this case. So pay attention to that. They may say something, you might say, oh, this is cultural. You're speaking to the imam, the culturally refused. No, it's not cultural. It might be Islamic. Find out. So that's another important point with regards to marriage, that you have to choose someone that you're going to be happy with. Also, as well, when it comes to getting married, as well as looking at the person you're going to get married to, this is also another thing that comes up. If a sister's in niqabi, for example, right, and he's having meetings with her, at what point does he say, I want to see you? And what point does she agree to show her face? Do you know what I mean? Do you wait till you've had 5, 6, 7 meetings? Or is it after the first meeting? She's seeing you, why can't you see her straight away? You haven't come in with a niqab. She knows, if she wants a second meeting or a third meeting, she's obviously happy with how you look, isn't it? But as a man, what are you thinking in the second and third meeting? Answer. What she looks like. Understand that, women. Men are thinking what she looks like. You have to show him what you look like. It's just simple. That way, if there's a third meeting, it's a third meeting based upon attraction as well as compatibility. But before that time, one thing's in his mind only: what does she look like? He's got a number of ways of finding out. He can use strategy, right? Try to catch her when she's eating, lift up in the car and drinking, right? He can try to do that, or he can send his family, female family members. Okay, look, go to the house. Make sure you see the girl. Tell me, is she pretty or not, right? Huh? He has to see for himself. It's true. If they say she's not, he's still going to have a doubt. Well, I haven't seen. Maybe you don't like her, but I might like her. So you're right. They might say no. Or show a picture. They bring a picture. They show the picture. This is how she looks. But pictures are, as you all know, Snap and all this other stuff, pictures can lie. Right? Pictures can lie. So pictures aren't always good. In any case, the point being is that it's better to, after the initial contact, to everyone sees everyone, so everyone knows if they continue because there's physical attraction. The rest becomes compatibility issues, likes and common interests and stuff like that, and family. So you should look at the one before you get married, not after you get married. That goes without saying. Also, avoid khalwa. Khalwa is not allowed. Doesn't matter if you think, we're engaged to get married. We're getting married next week anyway. It's fine if we're together alone in a locked room. No, it's not. Still not allowed. Until you get married, there's no khalwa. Full stop. Khalwa is an indication that you're married. But if two people are alone in a house together and they come out, the assumption is that that's a man who's married to that woman and that's a woman who's married to that man. The seclusion. Khalwa, seclusion. Right? Seclusion in a place where someone to enter would need permission. Right? They'd have to knock. Excuse me, can I come in, please? That's what khalwa means. You and her alone like that. That's not permissible. When it comes to the nikah, there are 3 pillars for the nikah to be valid. There's the bride, the groom, bride being a girl, groom being a male. There's an offer and there's the acceptance. The offer comes from the guardian of the girl, i.e. her father. Or who? What's the order? Her father or her grandfather goes up. If there's no grandfather, then it starts to go down. Her son, if she's got a son, or her son's son, goes down. If they don't exist, then it goes sideways, right? I.e. in order of inheritance. Inheritance, how does it work? You inherit with your usul and your furu'. Your usul are the ones where you came from, your parents. Your furu' are the ones that come from you, your children. If they're there, then no one else has the opposite. If the dad's there, no one else can come in and take the waliship, the guardianship. The dad's not there and the granddad's there, no one else can take it from the granddad. It's his job. The dad and granddad's not there, but there's a son, it's his job. He's old enough. If there's no sons, no granddad, then it goes to her brother, full brother. If the full brother's not there, then it goes to half brother on the dad's side. I.e. there's an order for that. It's not just anyone can do it. Right? There's an order for the waliship. That's with regards to so he's the one that makes the offer. What's the offer? Do you want to marry? After they've agreed, the mum sat down, the mum's seen him. There's no harm him having a meeting and the mum's there and the auntie's there and the girl's there. Right? The dad doesn't have to be there for every meeting, doesn't have to be there in every. The mums can handle all that stuff, it's not an issue. But the contract itself, it has to be the father. The father of the bride, right? Not someone else's father that they've just brought along. There's 4 conditions for the validity of a marriage. 4 conditions for the validity of a marriage. Number 1, and it sounds obvious, but believe me, there's occasions where it happens. You have to specify who's being married. It has to be this particular girl and that particular boy. Can't be married, I'm going to marry my son to one of my nieces, right? One of his cousins. And you don't specify which one. No, it has to specify which one it is. Right? I specify what son it is and what girl it is. That's one thing. The second thing, they both have to be happy with the marriage. If they're unhappy with the marriage, it's not considered a valid marriage. I understand that. There's no forced marriages. The third, the wali has to be there. Without a wali, there's no valid marriage, and there has to be at least two upright witnesses. Right? 2 upright witnesses. As long as these are in place, when they get married, you can say, this is a valid marriage contract according to Islam. Okay? If this is missing, i.e. there's no wali, or for example, there's no witnesses, it's a secret marriage, shubha marriage. Okay, we're at uni, fitna. Okay, let's just get married secretly and not tell no one. Doesn't count. You can't do that in Islam, right? You can't be a shubha marriage. You can't just marry secretly just because you want to, and you don't want to tell your parents. You're scared what your parents will say. It's not allowed. You have to include your parents, and you have to deal with it according to the legislation, the guidance of Islam. After that, you've avoided a dodgy marriage. You've got a proper marriage. You have to do a walima. What's a walima? It's a wedding celebration. It doesn't have to be a feast, your students, right? It can be a small thing. The little restaurant cooks food for 50 people, 20 people, 30 people. It doesn't have to be in a big hall. It doesn't have to be lots of nasheeds, this big elaborate entrance and exit and photographers and filming. It doesn't have to be that, your students. If it works out like that, great, but it's not important, i.e. something which is not sunnah, don't make it a sunnah. Something which is not sunnah, don't make it sunnah. The Messenger of Allah said, awlim walau bishat. Do a walima even if it's with one sheep. i.e. even if it's a small thing, not something which is huge. So if the wedding's done correctly, there's a walima. The walima announces the fact that these two people are married. It's not a doubtful wedding. After that, alhamdulillah, proceed upon the barakah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because weddings bring barakah, they bring blessing. Right? And staying single is a fitna. All right? You put yourself in danger, literally, especially in an environment like the one we have, where there's easy access to fawahish, or disobedience. So inshallah, that's something to do with the pillars of a marriage. So now any of you are ready to get married, inshallah, then put your hands up and he's going to find you he's going to find you a spouse while he looks for himself as well. Yeah. In any case, at the least, you know what the pillars of a marriage are. You just need to learn what the rights and the responsibilities are. That's important. I.e., today, for example, if someone said, okay, call the imam to do the nikah, you can say, no, don't need the imam. I know the pillars, I can do it. Forget the imam, you don't have to pay him, he's going to charge you money. I'll do it for free. Where's your dad? Where's the girl? Where's the boy? Okay, yeah. Do you accept? Okay, no problem. Alhamdulillah, you're married. Right? Yeah, Islam is easy. Don't complicate it. Islam is easy. Don't make it difficult. Don't follow traditions that make Islam difficult when it's something which Allah has made easy for everyone to practice and implement, and the Messenger of Allah showed us how easy it is as well. So don't complicate it by things which make it difficult to put yourself through burden and hardship. That's important to understand. Dan. However you want to do it, it's your show.
Okay, first question is, who should a potential spouse approach if there is no relief?
In the initial, wait, is this from a man? There's a difference from men and from women, obviously, always. It's anonymous. Okay, let's answer from a man's point of view and answer from a woman's point of view, right? Okay, sisters, who should a potential approach if there's no wali? In your eyes, who do you think it should be? Huh? If there's no, you said there's no wali.
Yeah, no.
Which means what? Now there's always going to be someone. There's always someone. Who should a potential approach? Brother, uncle, right? But the initial approach is going to, because he won't have your uncle's number, he won't know your uncle, he doesn't know your brother, I'm assuming. All right, so the initial approach, how is that going to happen? That's the question. How should he approach, according to what you understand and know? Okay, that's an ideal situation. What's practical? What actually happens practically? I want to ask you an honest question. What practically happens? Huh? From the friendship groups, right? Same thing. That's what practically happens. There's a third party from a friendship group that goes ahead and shows an interest and expression. If she's now thinks, okay, that's a potential, she's going to take it back to a relative, a family member, whether it's her, she's going to choose who goes to at that point. Whether it's whoever's the easiest for her to speak to, just to see if there's initial compatibility. She might not include at that point everyone, her dad and her brother. She might just include, for example, her mum, because that's who she speaks to, it's easy. She might include another family member, her auntie, for example, if that's who. But the point is, after she's seen that there's a compatibility, the family should be involved from that moment onwards, and it shouldn't be an attachment that's built up between them. Okay, the other way around now. What about if a sister wants to approach a man, or that doesn't happen? Does it happen? 2023. At the time of the Messenger of Allah, 1400, 1444 years ago, it happened. Right? There's a woman came to the Messenger of Allah and said that she offered herself for marriage. Right? I.e., women are allowed to, if they see someone who's also they see as a potential, it's not shameless, and that's culturally incorrect for a woman to approach a man. Doesn't mean she's got no shame. No, it means that he looks like a good potential, so she's going to, through a third party interest, say, are you interested? And that's it. No problem. If he's interested now, what happens? Same process. He takes it back to someone that can take it back to someone that can talk to someone that can. And then you build up there, see if there's compatibility. Once there's compatibility, families get involved straight away. The mistake that people make is not keeping families involved or not keeping third party involved and having an attachment amongst themselves. And then 6 months down the line, they have an argument and they divorce even though they never got married, right? Because they've had that relationship built up over 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, right? So that shouldn't happen. Family should be involved early. No. Is there any discussion points that we need to speak about that are unfinished? Go on. Yeah. Go on. That's good. Find someone you like, and then when you get married, call them and let them get involved. But when you say family, you still need someone involved that's going to be there with you. Yeah. Use her mum, her auntie, her sister. She's got a mother. Her mother's involved. Her auntie's involved in the process. And then when it's time to get married, Dad, come do your bit. Right? I like that. That's it. Use her brothers, uncles, whoever's willing to be a part of it. Let them be a part of it, and then take it on afterwards. Right? The point is, the marriage contract can't happen without the wali, or that's the issue. As for the process, that can happen without the wali. It's not essential. It's better, but it's not necessarily essential. Yeah. Take a question from here, then a question from here, then a question there. Is intercourse an act of ibadah? The answer, for some people, yes. For some people, no. For the person that does it because they want to intercourse in marriage, that's a very important qaid, right? Intercourse in marriage for the person that got married and is having intimacy inside of marriage because that's what Allah's commanded, and there's a hadith about that where the Messenger of Allah was asked about that. Are we going to be rewarded for having intimacy? Literally, this exact question. Are we going to be rewarded for having intimacy with our spouse? That was the question, right? What was the answer? If you was going to have sex outside of marriage, do you think you're going to be under threat of punishment? That was the answer. I.e., if you commit haram and have intimacy, i.e. sexual intercourse. When I say intimacy, I want to be clear that not every intimacy is fornication, right? But if you had sex outside of marriage, would you be under threat of punishment? Right? I won't say would you be punished because you may make tawbah and Allah forgives you. Right? And Allah's off forgiven. You sin, you ask tawbah, Allah forgives you. You sin again, ask tawbah, Allah forgives you. But you're under threat of punishment. What's the answer? Yes. So if you're doing it inside of marriage, then you're going to be rewarded. Rewarded for staying away from haram, that's one reward. Right? And it's multiplied. Rewarded for helping someone else stay away from haram, your spouse. Right? Rewarded because you make dua before you have intimacy. Right? And stuff like that. Think about it. This is the beauty of Islam. I'll be honest with you. What's connected to having intimacy? Afterwards you have to do what? You have to make a ghusl before you can pray. A ghusl in itself is an act of ibadah that you do. I don't want to make this sound crude, but I'm just saying that the more intimacy you have with your spouse, the more you're making ghusl, obligatory ghusl, which means the more you're getting rewarded. It's just a fact. It's a fact, isn't it? Right? Because you can't pray until you make ghusl at that point. And to pray is an act of ibadah that you need to make ghusl for. Okay, so yeah, there's other acts of ibadah that are connected to it that also you get rewarded for. And that's the beauty of Islam. A Muslim is always worshipping Allah if his intention is right. As for the other way, i.e., for example, he doesn't have any intention, he's just, or she doesn't have any intention, it's just desires purely. They don't understand the importance of it. No, they don't get rewarded, but they're not going to be under. They just lose. They lose an opportunity, that's all, to get reward. There's no punishment. They're not doing anything disliked. You can't say it's makruh, what they're doing. No, it's not makruh at all. Right? But they lose an opportunity to reward, yeah. Yeah.
Is that still the case if the guy was...
No. The brother's asking in regards to zina, does that mean that a person that committed zina in the past, he can only marry someone else that committed zina in the past? That's not true. That's not true whatsoever. What it means is that a person that's engaged in zina, at that moment, if he gets married to a woman that's not engaged in zina, that marriage is not going to be valid. He's a zani. The only thing that is suitable for him is a woman like him. Right? He can't be a zani, sleeping around with a woman, and expect to have a woman that doesn't sleep around. No, go sleep with a woman that sleep around as well. Like you. Not you. But I say like the person that we're speaking about. Right? So yeah, so the marriage in that case, if a man committed zina and he repented, his repentance is accepted. That's it. He doesn't have to tell her. If she committed zina and repented, her repentance is accepted, she doesn't have to tell him. No.
Sounds like a simple question, but what's your best advice for getting over a heartbreak, moving on from someone? Any specific verses part of the Quran?
The problem shouldn't have happened in the first place. That's the first thing. That's the important thing to understand. You're the cause of the problem, so you have to be the cause of the solution. What does that mean? That means you have to be patient. Time heals all wounds, as they say, the saying goes. And you have to also, if that's not going to rekindle, or you're not going to marry that person, then find someone else to marry. Literally. Women are women and men are men at the end of the day. Inshallah, you'll find someone that's better. Especially because you didn't marry them in the first place, I'm assuming. Yeah, there's a potential to marry, it didn't happen. Then, alhamdulillah, you haven't actually, what's the word? You haven't actually grown on the person, they haven't grown on you. It's difficult if you've already had intimacy. That's where the problem lies. Problem lies if you've already had intimacy as well with the person, it's been over a period of time, then the attachment becomes more, there's more of a connection, basically, than if you haven't had intimacy. So the best advice is to, number one, understand that time sorts it out. Number two, if you can't rekindle that and get married to that person, then seek marriage, because obviously you have the desire and the age to get married. The third thing is not to have any kind of memorabilia, i.e. block them everywhere. If it's a woman, block her on Facebook, block her on Insta, Snap, change your phone number. Change your whole phone number, start a new leaf completely. Even if she wanted to contact you, she can't. Even if you wanted to contact her, you can't contact her because you completely forgot her. And I hope you don't go in study in the same uni and live on the same street. Otherwise, you've got a musibah. Right? Because it's not easy to move house and it's not easy to change uni. The rest of the stuff is easy. It's easy to change your number. Right? It's easy to block someone. It's easy to cut off from socials. The rest of it, moving house and changing uni is not as easy as the rest of the stuff. No.
How would you convince your parents who want their child to get married young due to still being in education?
How do you convince your parents that?
How would you convince parents who don't want their child to get married young due to them still being in education?
You've got two options. You go with what they go with, but you start to say, okay, no problem, you're my daddy, my mum, I love you, I respect everything you're saying. But at least let's now start to say, as soon as I finish education, if that's the reason, I'm going to get married, and you're on board with that. So you start that process. So you haven't lost the battle, but you've won the war, right? So you've got them to agree to something, even though they disagree with something else. Okay, now they've on board with that. Leave it 3 months or 4 months and try to bring the goalpost a bit closer. Don't be hasty. That's the main thing. They're your parents. They've looked after you for all that time, did everything they've done that for all that time for 18. For you to be hasty with them for over marriage to somebody over a year or a year and a half or 2 years. It's not a long time. It goes quickly. So don't be hasty with your parents. Be slow with them. But if you concede, let them concede as well. Right? Okay, no problem. But as soon as I finish uni. If they say no, say, but you said when I finish education, why are you changing the goalposts? In a polite way, obviously. And like that, then you start working on them, basically. And after that, like I said, 6 months down the line, well, there's someone, and then you bring it that way. And then you never know. Down the time, making dua, number one to Allah. Allah opens their hearts to the idea. Don't forget dua, obviously. That's the first and middle and last thing of all of these situations. No.
What's the correct way to approach your sister for marriage? Is it permissible to ask her directly for her father's number?
Yes, it's allowed as long as it's with etiquettes and with manners. It's in a good way, then it's allowed. There's no problem in that. But my question is that practical? That's my question. Do you just go to someone that you've never had any communication about? She's never had any communication about you. Doesn't have any information on you. Doesn't know anything about you. And you go to her and say, you know what, you look gorgeous. Can I have your dad's number? Is that a good way? Does that work or not? Huh? Is it effective? It is effective. Huh? In getting her number, yeah. I mean, what do you think? Is that good? Does that work? You'd say no. So how should it happen? Yeah. Long story short, what happened? She punched him. She slapped him. Oh, is that? Okay, yeah. So in any case, you do that once she's kind of not expecting it, but at least you've set an indication beforehand. But if you did do it anyway because you've got the confidence and you're a rajul and you wear expensive clothes, you think there's going to be something that's going to indicate that you're worthy of marriage, then go ahead. There's nothing impermissible about it. And vice versa, the same. She can go to him and say, look, here's my dad's number. Right? Here's my dad's number, call him. What would you do if a sister came up to you and said that? Huh? No, they're not asking for mum's number. They said, here's my dad's number, call him. Here's my brother's number, call him. Huh? What do you think? What do you think she's too forward? Say, I'm not going to marry you. How dare you come to me and give me your dad's number? What do you think she's forward or not? That's the question. Huh? Depends on how it's forward. It's too forward. But it's permissible. How else are people going to get married? In our time, in our age, in a non-Muslim country, generally speaking, you're not in a situation where everyone around you is a potential because you're in a Muslim country and everyone around you is possible. Everyone around you of the right age, obviously, is a potential. No, i.e., you're very limited in the potentials. That being the case, and we already have the example of in the life of the Messenger of Allah, so some of the woman that came to the Messenger of Allah and said about marriage. So it might seem forward, but I'm telling you, Islamically, it's not forward. I.e., it's a woman that knows what she wants and she wants to marry you, and she's courageous enough to deal with a potential rejection. That's difficult. You might say no. Look at her and think, no, thank you. All right, it's possible. What if he does do that? How do you respond to that? It's his right. Don't be offended. Don't take it to heart. Don't get emotionally broken-hearted and stuff like that. It's not a big deal. Masalama, okay, inshallah. May Allah find you a good wife. You just lost out on the best one, but anyway. Whatever. I laugh it off. It's not a big deal. No.
You mentioned earlier that a man and a woman should be compatible in deen. What if a man wanted to marry a woman from Abrahamic religion?
Yeah.
What's the ruling on that?
It's permissible with conditions. It's permissible for a man to get married to a woman of the book with conditions that she's muhsina. What does that mean that she's muhsina? Go to the tafsir of the scholar to read it and explain and understand it. That's the thing. Does that exist in our time, in this country, in our age? Possibly it does, right? But just as it's hard enough to find a Muslim girl who's got compatibility in deen, believe me, it's going to be doubly hard to find a non-Muslim Christian or Jewish girl who's got compatibility, who's got muhsana. Doubly hard or triply hard. The second issue, again, comes down to context and society, or society generally speaking. We don't live in Shakespearean times, right? Where the gender roles were clear and women and men all were fulfilling what they were supposed to be doing. So in that case, you have another problem, which is when we speak about a woman marrying a man marrying a woman from Abrahamic faith, we're speaking about a woman that follows her husband. All right. So when she has kids, the kids are named with Muslim names, and are raised upon Islam. That's not generally the case in a society where we don't have those traditions are lost. Right. So it would be a very dangerous move, and I would never recommend. If someone came to me, I want to get married, I found a Christian girl, I'll say go somewhere else. And not because it's impermissible, it's permissible. I don't want to be the one that does it. I'm not obliged to do every nikah that comes on my doorstep. I'll say go to another imam, let him do it. So I'm not going to be the one that's responsible for you marrying a girl that's going to have kids for you that are going to have no inclination towards salah or som and stuff like that. No.
Should you marry a husband more knowledgeable than you, or is it okay to learn together? What's more ideal?
If you're young, you're going to be learning together anyway. That goes without saying. But generally speaking, the man is usually more knowledgeable than the wife. So it's better to pick a husband that has more knowledge. But it doesn't have to be a scholar or a knowledgeable student of knowledge. That's a myth. You need to find a good husband. A good husband doesn't necessarily equate with a student of knowledge. Someone that's seeking knowledge. That's not always the case. Someone can be seeking knowledge and be a bad husband. It's entirely plausible that they're seeking knowledge and they benefit from their knowledge, but in relationships they have issues. They're a bad husband. What you need from a man is what the hadith of the Messenger of Allah mentions. If a man comes, men are married for two things, right? Generally speaking, you're looking at two things in a man. And these are qualities men should adopt, basically, because this is what makes you valuable. Number one is he's kind, right? And number two, he has taqwa, right? I.e., the hadith says, if a man comes, تَرَضَوْنَ دِينَهُ وَخُلَقَهُ فَزَوَّجُوهُ. If a man comes who you're pleased with his deen and his character, then marry him. Character, he was speaking about kindness. Deen, he was speaking about, he establishes the salah, he praises, if he fasts the month of Ramadan, if he's wealthy, he gives zakat, right? So if a person comes, he has compatibility in deen, and he's got good character, meaning he's kind in his speech, compliments and stuff like that, not just in the honeymoon period, but afterwards as well, then you should get married to that person, whether they're a student of knowledge or they're a lay person. Doesn't make a difference. Doesn't make a difference at all. No. Lay person meaning he knows his deen, not a lay person as in, no.
Living in London is expensive. If a woman has to work to keep the house afloat financially, how much does a man contribute to household responsibilities?
I have an issue with the premise in the first place. She has to work to contribute to the household responsibilities. I think that's a false inference or a false premise in the first place. I don't think she has to work to contribute. I think she wants to work. So if we was to reword the question, and I'm going to reword it, if she wants to work so they can have a better standard of living, how much housework should he have to do? I'm going to just completely reword your question. Sorry if I'm ripping it apart. Okay, the question is, they're both earning. She's outside of the house, right? It's not right to expect her to be outside of that, or to allow her to permit her to be outside of the house, and to also expect her to come home and do all the other duties as well, which means make sure she's cooking and she's also cleaning and all this other stuff as well. It's not correct to do that, all right? Unless you're going to say, don't work, and whatever you're going to lose in income, I'm going to provide, or not what you lose in income, I'm going to provide a reasonable standard of living that you're used to. When it comes to the nafaqah the man has to give, it has to be a reasonable standard of living that she's already accustomed to anyway. Okay? That has to be understood. So first of all, whatever she's accustomed to in her household, that's what he should provide. Anything extra, she wants more than that. She wants to go on holiday twice a year. She wants other things that she wants independently. No problem. Okay, she works, you work. You got more money. Her working means that she also has to use some of that money to cover some of the costs of the things that she's no longer doing in the house. It's can't she working and still tell him to, okay, and you still have to pay for dinners, takeaways every night, and you still have to pay for a cleaner to come and clean the house once a week because I'm working, but I can still spend my money only on myself. No, the money that she's earning, use that to pay for the things that she's unable to do because she's working. All right, that's generally speaking. Well, if he wants that, if he's happy, you work, keep all your money as well, and I'm still going to spend all my money. That's also fine as well. There's no issue in that. But don't be a burden. It's not. This is something which is understand. This is why you should get married when you're young. You get married when you're young. You build together, right? So you understand each other's needs and each other's wants, right? So when you don't get married young, you end up coming in with a different type of mentality, right? You might come in with a mentality that he has to earn and provide everything, and you don't understand what he went through to get where you got to. So this marriage young has numerous benefits, and that is one of them. Yeah.
You say a child is one of the benefits for a woman in marriage.
And for the man, it's an asset. Yeah, both, not just for the women.
You say a child is one of the benefits for a woman in marriage, but what if the wife doesn't want to have children?
Ask the men. What do you think? There you go. There's your answer. We're talking practically, right? If she doesn't want to have children, she needs to marry someone that also doesn't want to have children for that period of time that she doesn't want to have children for. Because the moment he wants to have children, that's his haqq. Likewise, the moment she wants to have children, that's her haqq. Reverse it. Well, if you marry someone that doesn't want to have children, these are real cases, by the way. It's a real case. Some men say that they don't want to have kids. They don't want to bring kids into this world. This world is bleak, right? It's depressing. There's a lot of evil in it. I don't want to have kids. Okay, but she wants to have kids. What's going to happen in that marriage? It's not going to work. It's going to end. So that has to be clear at the beginning. I don't want to have kids for this many years. He says, okay, I don't want to have kids. Even if he says that and she says that, if she changes her mind, he has to make a decision. I said what I said. I can let you go, or you can still stick to the agreement that we had initially, or I can let you go. Vice versa, same situation. But it's never like that black and white. People come to understanding and agreements usually, inshallah. And again, delaying kids for a benefit. I'll give you an example. Your students. She's still a student, he's still a student. It makes sense to do what? To say, we're not going to have children until we finish our studies and we've moved into our own place. That makes sense, no issue. He shouldn't come back and change that at that point because it doesn't make sense. Unless he's going to say, I've already got my own place. And anything you lose from finishing, no, that won't work, generally speaking, because the studies, there's a connection to her family, expectations from the family and stuff like that, so it's a difficult situation. But generally speaking, if they're not still studying, delay having kids for what benefit and for what purpose, and for how long. It's permissible to do it, but for a maslahah, for a benefit, right? Oh, because we're going to go study abroad for 1 year in Egypt and learn Arabic and Quran, and we want to do that together. Or, for example, you're going to work for a year, I'm going to work for a year, and we're going to use that money that we work to save up to put down the money for our home abroad or something like that. There's a benefit, right? But if there's just delay for the sake of delaying it because I want to do things, there's things I want to achieve in my life, then that's a mistake. How long is it going to take to achieve that? You have no idea, no end date. So delaying it for a benefit is permissible. Delaying it without a benefit or for no reason is something that needs to be looked into.
My mum thinks I'm too childish for marriage, but I think I'm ready and I want to get married to him to prevent dinner.
Yeah, again, so the fact that you've already mentioned the topic is the starting point, right? And it's just a case of now building up on that. What's going to be next? Okay, so you've mentioned you want to get married. Okay, she's too childish. Okay, what does she mean by you're too childish? Okay, answer that question, prove that you're not too childish, and go to the next. Okay, I'm not too childish now, Mum, what next? What's the obstacle now? I address the issues that are there because it's valid fears. Your parents have fears for you, and they're valid, right? To them. Okay, that's their perspective. You can't just dismiss it and just say they don't know. That's not good enough. Address their concerns. Show that you're not too childish. Start cooking in their house, start baking, show that you can manage a house. If it's in the case of a woman, if it's in the case of a man, show that you can contribute. Start showing that you're able to maintain financial independence, i.e. remove the concerns that they have and then come back again. Okay, what's the concerns now? That's a method that you can do. Other than that, throw tantrums and nag them. All right? Stamp your feet and say, but if I don't get married now, blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
With regards to marriage, let's say the husband follows a different method to the wife. When it comes to the children, what are the children brought from?
In terms of marriage, the brother asks if the sister follows a different madhab to her husband. When we say madhab, if we speak about two aspects, madhab in issues of fiqh and sunnah and bid'ah, right? Madhab in issues of aqidah. In issues of fiqh, I can't see it being I don't think that should be an issue. The woman follows her husband, it's simple. Don't get me wrong, not in oppression and not in doing things which are wrong. But in terms of leadership, he leads and she's going to follow, right? So that answers that question, right? So if he says, for example, okay, kids, we're going to teach them to pray like this or whatever, that's what's going to happen. But in most cases, and this is the reality, practically speaking, the woman's the one that teaches the kids and educates them when they're young growing up. The man steps in at a later age. So the woman's the one that's going to have an impact on the kids, which is why a man's going to pick a woman based upon not just what he likes her, but like what he wants his kids to be. That's a fact. He leads, but she's the one that's got her hands on there. She's controlling, right? He's leading, but she's the one that's controlling. That's with regards to fiqh madhabs. With regards to sunnah and bid'ah, then there's no compromise on that issue. You know, you have to follow the sunnah. It's not allowed to do bid'ah. It's not allowed to do innovation. Whether it's the man doing it or whether it's the wife doing it. In that case, it's just a case of, hold on a minute, what's correct here? Education. Education's key. Someone culturally brought up in a certain way will have a certain mentality, a custom, and that custom they can consider to be sunnah. But it might be a bid'ah. What are you going to do? You can't just say, no, it's bid'ah done. No, you have to educate. Why is it a bid'ah? How does it go against the sunnah? What did the Prophet ﷺ do? You have to educate. And education sometimes has to come indirectly. And it shouldn't be harsh. I.e., the principle between the husband and the wife is always kind treatment. It's always gentleness and kindness, because that's how women respond better. And likewise, as well, that's how men respond better. Now, we'll take one or two last questions, one from them, one from the sisters, and one from this. Yeah. Knowledge as in Islamic knowledge, or knowledge as in university studies and PhD and masters and stuff like that. Islamic knowledge. And there's never been a situation where seeking knowledge full time affects and gets in the way of getting married. There's never been a situation apart from a societal problem, right? Society says you can't do both, right? If you're seeking knowledge, you shouldn't be married. If you're married, that means you've already finished seeking knowledge. It's a mistake. You can do both, and your wife supports you and helps you in that. She's seeking knowledge as well. I did an interview in the Maktab. You can go on Medina College YouTube channel. You can watch this series of In the Maktab, where I did an interview with a brother called Sheikh Abdullah Khamis. He's a student at the Jamia. He graduated recently. His wife was a student with him. He was married while he was there. And she's also a student of knowledge. And she had kids while they were there. She managed to do that. He managed to work. She managed to work part-time. They both managed to study full-time. And they were raising kids. It's a myth to believe that as a man and as a woman, you can't do both and combine both. Matter of fact, combining both is what you're good at doing. Once you put yourself to it, it gives you purpose, right? So it's definitely possible. And there's loads of examples of people that have done it and have done it successfully without dropping out, without quitting, without getting divorced. They're still married. And that's an example you can see if you go on the Medina College YouTube channel. Any other questions? There's two questions. Can I take it from the sister, because I know you've had a few questions? Yeah, that's a good question. So there's someone that's a potential, and you're going to pray istikhara anyway before you proceed, right? So you pray istikhara at the beginning, and then you proceed with that potential, right? You're not waiting for anything to happen. You're not waiting for a dream. You're not waiting for him to send a message or something. No, you're going to pray istikhara and then proceed. Okay, now you prayed istikhara, you're proceeding. how do you get to know that that person is compatible with you or he's a good person suitable for you in marriage, right? You have to do your research, it's true, because it's a big commitment, it's a huge commitment. So you have to do your research. You get to know them, not from them. That's the most important thing to understand. And it's not the questions you ask that person and the answers they give you, because they're going to give you the best answers, and vice versa as well, right? You know, and if they want to marry you, they're going to tell you anything you want to hear, generally speaking, without lying, right? They'll compliment you, they'll say the right stuff. You need to find out about the person from other people. A female companion of the Messenger of Allah was proposed to by two different Sahaba, two different men, right? Abu Jaham and Muawiyah ibn Safwan, right? And when she came and she asked about both of them, she asked the Prophet Muhammad. So what did she do? She went and she found out. Okay, at that point, it's not a case of, oh, I can't tell you about them, it's backbiting. No, it's not backbiting. You have an obligation to speak about them. What did the Messenger of Allah say? He said that as for Abu Jahm, for example, then what did she say? He doesn't leave, the stick doesn't come off of his shoulder, right? And that's a metaphor for the fact that he is heavy-handed with his wife. As for Muawiyah, he said, "Su'luq la malahu." He's poor. He's so poor, and he doesn't have anything. He's a level of poverty where he won't be able to do anything for her, right? And then he said, also go and marry, and he mentioned to marry who? Osama bin Zayd. So here she did her research. So you have to do your research, but not asking the person, because they're not going to tell you how they really are. You have to ask someone that knows them, and whoever you ask that knows them has to. And now today it's easy to find out about people. They got social media, go on their social media, go on their Facebook, go on their Instagram, find their Snap, set up an account. That's an anonymous account, right? Set up an anonymous account. No, literally, set up an anonymous account, right? And get them to add you to their Snap, right? Or get your brother to do it, whatever. You need to do that. It's not a small issue. Marriage is a big issue, isn't it? So set up an account and find out what they post, right? Where they go, who they hang around with, right? And don't think that just because they come lectures, it means that they're the right person. That's a mistake. Understand that. Marriage is not about lectures and going lectures together. That's an aspect of it. That doesn't mean they're a good husband. A good husband is someone that's kind, and character-wise, and someone that feels a lot of regards to themselves. That's it. He can be a lay person, right? And don't take this wrong. He might even, for example, you know, he doesn't have to wear a thobe to be a good husband, generally speaking. That's not an indication. Mashallah, he's got taqwa, he wears a thobe to college. No, doesn't mean anything at all in terms of as a husband, right? That's his thing. That's his sense of style. That's his dress sense. That's what he wants to wear when he's around to protect himself from doing sin, right? He could be a sinner, and the thobe is his shield and armor. Once he's wearing it, he's scared to commit sins because he knows that the thobe indicates something, right? But once it's off, so the point is, you have to ask, but not him, and you have to find out through social media. It's easy. It's easier today than it was in the past. Is that ask a follow-on question? You can do, but the teacher is going to have the wrong impression of the student. He's the worst person. He's not the worst person to ask, but he's not the best person to ask. Why? Because generally speaking, if I've got students here that attend the college, I'm only going to see from them the best of character and the best of manners and the best of everything, generally speaking. But when they're with their friends, that's different. They're gonna be normal. They'll be who they really are. You need to find out who that person really is, not who he pretends to be in front of the elders and the religious people, for example. Right? So the teacher's not the best person to ask. If my advice would be the last person you ask. What you're going to find out from the teacher, you're going to find out that he attends lessons, he's punctual, he does his homework, i.e. the normal stuff, right? But not to do with his character. You just find out stuff to do with his punctuality. You know, does he volunteer sometimes, right? You know, but you won't find out his character from the teacher. No. The last question from there.
Can a brother see his potential without her hijab if they are in a marriage meeting to judge if he's attracted to her? That question is regard to if there are different opinions.
Did you add that bit, or was that in the question? It sounds like you added that bit. The question says, is that from a man or is that from a boy or a girl? First of all, from a sister. Okay. The question is, this issue comes down to you, your family, and your dad, and your family situation, right? It's not generally down to him. It's down to you and your dad. Meaning that, if, for example, you're having a marriage meeting, you're in your house, right, and your dad is comfortable with you showing your hair, or what ordinarily shows in the house, for the purpose of the marriage meeting to move things along, that's between you and your dad, if you're happy with it as well. Not just your dad, you have to also be happy with it, right? But if you're not happy with it and you're uncomfortable with it, even if your dad is okay with it, then no, you don't have to do it, right? And the issue is, like you mentioned, it's the issue where the scholars differ. Majority of the scholars say you can only see what shows ordinarily, which is the face and the hands, right? And the rest of it, how do you find out? You're going to say, as men, I need to know if she's slim or she's, voluptuous or something, right? No, it's true. You want to know. Men care about those things. Men care about those things. Is this a fact or not? Am I just making it up or not? You want to know. Or you don't mind just seeing, just as long as you see the outline of the abaya, that's enough for you. You don't have to care if she's skinny or not. Too skinny. Some women are too skinny. They don't. So how is he going to find out that information? He wants to know her hair, right? How do you find that information? How? Family. So on the opinion that he can't see her hair or any aspect of her body, meaning this area here, which can usually give an indication of her voluptuousness or slimness, or this part, on that opinion, he would get his female family members who will sit down anyway with the mums. The mums are going to sit down, the daughter's his sister, and then she'll be wearing her normal clothes, and they'll feed back the information to him, right? With their own take on it, obviously. But the point is, they'll still feed back the information. So that's the way you would do it if you're of the view that you can't see the hair. The other opinion, like I mentioned, that it's okay to see what ordinarily shows that she'd wear in her house, right? And that means what? Some of her arm, some of her calf, for example, and her hair would be out, right? Not that she'd be wearing, for example, tight, skinny jeans and, tight tops and all that other stuff. No, it doesn't mean that. What she ordinarily wears in the house, meaning what's modest. So that, on that opinion, then you can do that. But again, that comes down to who. It doesn't come down to the imam, doesn't come down to the man, it comes down to the girl and her guardians or her family. They're the ones that decide. The man requests it, she can easily say, no, I'm not comfortable with that. Send your sisters. Send your mum, let them see, and they can explain. I don't know if I want to marry you properly yet. Let me find out more first. All right, so it can change now.